You mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson, and one compelling thing you have in your documentary is Neil deGrasse Tyson is on TV and he's talking about the shape of the Earth, and he's talking about how they just discovered now that the Earth is more pear-shaped than it is round.
So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere, it's oblate, and officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby is a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, we've been seeing pictures of the Earth from space, and it's a perfect circle. So either you don't know what you're talking about, or those pictures aren't real. This is a serious disconnect that's hard to rectify, Neil.
Absolutely, yeah. And they've said that it's a sphere, and then they've said that it's an oblate spheroid flattened at the poles, so it's kind of like smushed. And now more recently they're saying it's an oblate spheroid flattened at the poles with a bulge in the south, so it's kind of pear-shaped. So they keep changing it, but you're right, the pictures that they've given us, they show a perfect circle. They don't show any sort of bulge or oblateness as they claim exists. And people say, oh, well, it's just not enough to be seen. But they're claiming it's quite a bit. He said it's the amount of Everest above sea level is how much more oblate it is, supposedly.
Right. You would think that would show up in the pictures. Now, a lot of people's first question is going to be, well, where's the edge? And I was surprised to see how easy that is to rectify, but I'm sure you get that a lot. How do you tell people when they come at you with, well, where's the edge? Why aren't people sailing off the edge or whatever?
So in the flat Earth model, the North Pole is in the middle, and the Earth is a disk shape, and the Antarctica is all the way around, holding the oceans in. And so it's a fact, if you're at the North Pole and you go south, no matter which actually, it doesn't matter where you are. If you go south, eventually you're going to end up in Antarctica. But on the ball model, it's just a little ice continent underneath the ball. Yet in this model, it's all the way around you, holding the oceans in. As for whether there's an edge beyond the Antarctic ice plateau, this wall that holds everything in is about 100 to 200 feet tall. And once you climb up on the ice wall, it's a plateau of snow that just goes on and on and on. And the public and myself are ignorant at the moment as to whether there is an edge at some point, whether there'd be a barrier, a dome, as many ancient cultures have said there is, or whether it's an infinite flat plain and it's just snow, ice, wind, and darkness forever. So that's still a mystery, how the ice actually terminates. But it is a fact that if you travel south from anywhere on Earth, you will end up at the Antarctic ice wall. The lie is that there's a South Pole, and they've put a ceremonial red and white barbershop pole with a ball Earth on top of it at an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice. And they even admit that it's not the actual South Pole, and they have this complex model how the North and South Poles on the ball Earth are constantly moving because of the nature of the molten magnetic core of the ball Earth they claim exists. But the real reason is they have guided tours there to the South Pole, and if you took a compass and you stood at their ceremonial pole, you should be able to walk in a circle and north would be in every direction. But of course that wouldn't happen, and so they'd have to answer to all these tourists every year as to why the South Pole clearly isn't the South Pole. And they even admit it. You can see on YouTube, and they give their complex answer as to why it's always moving and you can never really find it. Same with the North Pole. In fact, if you watch North Pole documentaries, they always claim they're at the North Pole, but they're only showing a Garmin with 90 degrees north latitude. They never pull out a compass to actually check if they're at the North Pole. They're just on some ice somewhere, could be anywhere on Earth, and then they're like 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 feet, we're at the North Pole.
Arriving destination, 15 feet, 12, 10, 2. North Pole. Top of the world, guys. Top of the world. We'll get that in a minute, Jake.
It's just some random ice, nothingness. So yeah, it's easy to lie about these things. And these no man's lands, the North Pole and the Antarctica, they don't allow us to independently explore them. So people like Rodney Clough or Jarl Anderhoy, independent explorers who've wanted to go to the North Pole and Antarctica without getting government pre-approval and only going with their escorts to the places they want you to go, they've actually been turned around at gunpoint by military vessels, not allowing them to go in. Jarl Anderhoy's faced jail time and fines for it as well. So they definitely don't want us exploring what is in the middle of the flat Earth and on the edges. They keep us in the middle.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. And the first thing I had thought when I was getting into this is like, well, what about airplanes? You know, people fly from North America to China to Europe, all around the globe, or, you know, the proposed globe. And this is easy to rectify with the model you laid out with the North Pole in the center. When you fly, if you think about the rings on a bullseye, you can fly around it can make it seem like you're going around a ball, but you're really just going around in a circular pattern on a flat plane. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about it like that. And if you look at, well, of course, you know, something we always talk about is hidden in plain sight, symbolisms and corporate logos that they use. And if you look at the UN flag, this is exactly the model you're proposing. And it even has an overlay of like a bullseye pattern that shows you the overlay is exactly how planes would fly around or how ships would navigate around. But it's really odd that the UN flag would take up the exact same composition or damn close to the flat Earth model.
Yeah, the UN flag is a flat Earth map. You can look at it. It is not a ball Earth. It's a flat Earth. And the bullseye you're talking about that's over it, if you count the number of holes they've got there in the bullseye, there's exactly 33. So what they've got is a flat Earth divided into 33 sections. And I'm sure you're aware that 33 is a significant occult number, especially among the Freemasons, who are the ones in charge of this whole deception, as I said, from all the way back to Pythagoras, the first Freemason who thought up this ball Earth theory, through Copernicus and Galileo and Newton and right up to today, Neil deGrasse Tyson, etc. So the Freemasons in the UN, the Freemasons in NASA, these are the people who are doing this, and they put their symbology right out there by having the UN flag be a flat Earth divided into 33 sections right in our face. And you know, meanwhile, they laugh about the flat Earth. It's got to be the most ridiculed position ever. And you got to think there's a reason for that. Why is the concept of flat Earth or being a flat earther so ridiculed? I have a flat Earth comedy special I made, and you can see Obama saying over and over again the flat Earth, ridiculing them, making jokes about them in his speeches. And I mean, these aren't just off-the-cuff remarks. These are things that are being written into his speeches. So why are they doing this? Why are they making sure that people know that the flat Earth is something to be ridiculed?
I agree with you on that. I thought that was pretty hair-raising because typical people have to assume that the model of the Earth is so rock solid that the flat Earth idea is so far past that it isn't even on the radar. It shouldn't even be worth mentioning, considering conventional science. So it is rather odd that that is Obama's go-to. Like, he's talking about how he wants to create progress, and he's like, you know, we can't have every debate. You know, we don't have time for the Flat Earth Society. And everybody cheers like, yeah, we don't need to have that fundamental of a debate. And it just struck me as kind of spooky.
If I say that the world is round and someone else says it's flat, that's worth reporting. But you might also want to report on a bunch of scientific evidence that seems to support the notion that the world is round.
We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. They must have been founding members of the Flat Earth Society. They would not have believed that the world was round.
Yeah, definitely.